Welcome to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. I'm author and speaker Carrie Severson. In each episode, I'll share stories and tips from my experience with caregiving and advocacy through my husband's cancer journey. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes podcast. Nice to see you. Episode 10. I have no idea how long this season's going to go. I think about it all the time. We're in terms of where we are in the story of me caregiving for my husband during his cancer journey. I'm entering week 4, and we're actually approaching his 1-year anniversary of being out of treatment. It's very weird. I feel like the year has gone by really quickly, and last year feels like 500 years ago. Gavin and I talk about that all the time because he's missing so much time. He doesn't remember much of his experience. And head and neck cancer patients have a very grueling treatment process, very horrific treatment plan where it's 5 days of radiation in a row, 2 days, 5 days on, 2 days off for 7 or 8 weeks. Once a week chemo. Gavin he was an extreme case where we had 2 trips to the ER plus an 8-day hospital stay, which I haven't talked about yet. And his treatment was extended because he was so weak to do treatment. And that 3-month window felt like 187 years. It's weird. Time's weird. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope what I'm providing you is supportive. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do. If you know a caregiver that this would resonate with, please send it on. All of this is to raise awareness for caregivers, family caregivers specifically, and in hopes of being able to get a book out to the masses, also called "I Saved You, Now Do the Dishes: The Other Side of Cancer." I'm really passionate about supporting caregivers right now, family caregivers specifically. And if I could get it down even further, niching down even further, family caregivers who are married to the person that they're caregiving for. I talked about this a little bit last episode. AARP does a lot of research on caregivers, family caregivers specifically, and they had a study in 2020 that they estimated there were 53 million family caregivers in the country. And out of that, they just kept on breaking down, various elements in terms of they think more than 60% of those 53 million people are women. I think it's 30% of those 53 million are Generation X. And I think I forget the number, maybe 17 million of those 53 million are actually married. I can't remember, but interesting. I'm really interested in Generation X, really interested in family caregivers married to their spouse. So if you can help me reach those people, I would greatly appreciate it. So today I really wanted to focus on this thing I had to adopt. I call them simple joys, maybe silver linings, but for me, they were simple joys. We pretty much started looking for them when Gavin and I got together because we were supposed to get married. Originally, our wedding date was like 32 days after the initial 2-week shutdown for COVID happened. And we had to plan our wedding over and over and over again. We ended up getting married over Zoom with him and me and like 8 other people around us, with 100 people on Zoom watching us. And everyone shouting to one another to mute themselves while my husband and I are doing vows. You know, in hindsight, it was pretty funny, but we had a reception a year and a half later because we couldn't get out of wedding contracts for like a third of the size of the wedding. So we had so much money to put into the flowers and, you know, the meals. And we actually ended up using money that was originally going to support. I mean, we had like 64 people, I think, at a reception, and there was originally close to 200 people supposed to come. So with that extra money, we ended up hiring like an entire separate team to come in to support the kids. And we had like all these kid activities set up and these like gigantic chess pieces set up, silver linings all over the place. That's pretty much been my husband and I. That's been our thing from the very beginning, which, you know, is probably a great life lesson, to be honest, or a great life tool to use, is to always see the other side, right? When we learned he had cancer, we were always looking for the upside. That was pretty hard, particularly because we both got COVID like right when his treatment started. And so when you're in these really hard, challenging experiences, trying to find a silver lining, trying to find a simple joy takes on a very different meaning. It looks different than it would in everyday life, or, you know, when life seems normal. So I wanted to share some examples. For me, I put on a lot of weight really quickly. I did not take care of my body. I went from, I think I put on like 3 or 4 dress sizes. I just ballooned up. I mean, cortisol for sure, off the charts. But it didn't help that whenever he would, you know, fall asleep in chemo, and chemo was like 3 or 4 hours. Instead of, in the beginning, I wouldn't go for a walk. I would like go downstairs and have a cheeseburger. But that was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, this is my simple joy of having a meal by myself. So when my husband first started chemo, my mom would come a lot and meet me when we would have lunch. And that would be my simple joy, having a meal with my mom. After a while, recognizing I wasn't taking care of myself and growing out of my pants, rather than sit down and have a cheeseburger when he was in chemo, as soon as he would fall asleep, I made sure that the nurse had my cell phone number in the event something happened, and I would find a pathway around the hospital. And that became my simple joy, simply getting out for a 20-minute walk. And that was sometimes like the only exercise I got that week, but I made it a habit. I want to say it was like week 3. I was like, all right, I can't eat cheeseburgers every day. They're not even that good in the hospital cafeteria because nobody ever uses salt. The meat's really mushy. It wasn't good. You have to like really trick yourself that this is a good cheeseburger. So instead of going into the cafeteria, I'm going to take my phone, leave everything here, and go for a walk. It worked. Another simple joy I had was, I want to say it probably was week 3 of his treatment. Prior to becoming a caregiver and his medical advocate, I actually led burnout recovery seminars, keynotes, workshops all over the country. I actually worked a lot in the healthcare system. I led seminars at conferences, at private healthcare companies hired me to come in and like support their employees through burnout. It was a very different experience being in front of like 500, 1,000 people talking about burnout in the medical community than being a caregiver knowing the person treating my husband was in burnout, because I could see the signs. I could hear it in their voice. I could see it in their eyes and their demeanor and the way they carried themselves, in the heaviness. They would sigh, their apathy, sharpness. I mean, they had so many signs. It was actually a very interesting experience. I think it was the first time in like 10 years of being in that burnout space, not pulling somebody aside and being like, hey, just so you know, this is what I do. I've been researching burnout for a decade. I've had it happen to me several times. A really quick tip, I was like in survival mode. So knowing they were in burnout, I would leave a meeting and be like, peace out, sister. I'm focusing on my health right now versus giving out anything else. I've got nothing else. I've got nothing left to give. I'm conserving here and pouring it back into me, which, that's not usually who I am. And that was very weird for me. But silver lining in this whole thing was I wrote a workbook called the Enoughness Method. And that came out 2024. But I got an interview for it on a national television show. And you have to get like pre-interviewed before the actual interview happens. So this was just for a pre-interview. So that was a great silver lining. We have radiation, we have chemo, get my husband back, put him to bed, change my outfit, take my hair down, put on some makeup, and I'm sitting in front of a Zoom camera. And I have this great 30-minute interview with a pre-booker on a national television show. Actually, I'm just going to say it was for the Drew Barrymore show. It was so fun because behind me is this coffee bar. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. But if you're not, my office is one of two places, right here in front of my coffee bar, or directly behind me in that chair right there, and looking outward into my messy kitchen. So silver lining, he's asleep in our bedroom, passed out, exhausted from radiation and chemo. And at this point, his neck blisters were really bad. And a couple hours after radiation, they would bleed and they would get really raw. So at this point in his journey, we were trying to find things that would take the pain away and the sting away, but mostly he just bled everywhere. I'm in this pre-interview. I've got this really pretty dress on, and I'm praying my husband doesn't walk out into camera looking like the Walking Dead. But my coffee bar was still Christmas. Inside our house, my husband and I agreed that he was diagnosed during November when we had Christmas everywhere. It was the end of November, beginning November 28th. I just put Christmas up. I didn't have the energy in this whole thing of taking Christmas down and putting, I guess it would have been like Valentine's Day or spring up or something. So we agreed that Christmas was going to stay up in the house until he was out of treatment. So silver lining was this woman who was interviewing me would, comment on every single Christmas nook I had everywhere and love the coffee bar. And we called it the Welcome to My Carrie Coffee Shop. And it was really fun, really cute. My husband gratefully stayed asleep, but left me a really sweet message. I still have it. All he said was, I love you, honey. Do great. Congratulations. I hope this goes somewhere for you. I'm still in communication with them. I have not been on the show. Obviously, the messaging now sort of shifted with Gavin's cancer and, my caregiving. But that was a great silver lining. In the middle of this huge mess, I had it wasn't the cancer show for 30 minutes. It was the Carrie show in my Christmas coffee bar. It was really cute. That was a great silver lining. Another silver lining, And this is so fun for like caregivers specifically. We have to find these little pops of sunshine throughout this really hard, dark journey, right? So in a previous episode, I told you I had to create an alter ego for myself because who I had to show up as was a very different level. I met a very different version of myself on this journey. She was always in there. We're always, every version of ourselves is in there somewhere. But this one, she was a force to be reckoned with. The tone of my voice, the sharpness of my voice, it was very different. I've said before that there was pre-cancer caregiving Carrie, caregiving cancer Carrie, post. In the journey of caregiving, invoking this alter ego, pulling from all of my Viking ancestors, I called my alter ego the spicy Viking. It's so funny because spicy is sometimes referred to as sexual. And when I said spicy Viking on a rampage, it had nothing to do with being sexual or feeling sexual at all. It was, I had a really hard day. Gavin made it incredibly challenging this specific day, and to the point where he wanted to hide out in the cafeteria. He didn't want to go to the meetings that he needed to go to. I needed him to attend these meetings so that he could actually get the drugs that he needed to alleviate some of the pain. But he was just so overwhelmed. He just wanted to go home and quit. So I allowed myself to have an out-of-body experience in various moments of this particular day that was really challenging. And I realized I needed to invoke my Viking heritage and create an alter ego when I sat down and just took a breath for the first time. He was actually in chemo. He had just fallen asleep, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, my God, this day sucked. I deserve to have an ice cream treat named after me. At the very least, I deserve to have a sandwich named after me. So when I was writing to my friends and family that night about the day, and I was no holds barred. I didn't want to sugarcoat anything. I didn't want to pretend the situation wasn't frustrating and hard and challenging and heavy for me, right? Heavy for him, heavy for me. I was very point blank. I'm like, this day was awful and I deserve an award for what my husband put me through today. And I'm like, at the very least, I deserve an ice cream sandwich or an ice cream treat or a sandwich. And I just started listing off names. For the sandwich, I was like, spicy tongue something or another. So, I'm just trying to play around with things that would make a sandwich, but that would have a little alter ego kind of concept to them. Anyway, spicy Viking on a rampage was just sort of spit off my tongue just really quickly. And it was part of this sort of running joke with my family. So little silver lining today still, I actually have somebody made red t-shirts to highlight the Viking heritage. And there's a picture of a Viking on it, an abstract Viking, if you will. Somebody else made me stickers with spicy Viking on a rampage. And throughout the experience, when I had a really bad day, I would make a joke that like I left a sticker on somebody's desk. It was just a fun little way for me to kind of get through really challenging days. Simple joy, silver lining. I made an alter ego and then took it to the extent of making stickers and putting it on a t-shirt. To this day, people think I should call the book that I wrote Spicy Viking on a Rampage instead of I Saved You No Do the Dishes. So as caregivers, we're really given opportunities consistently to find moment by moment pockets that help us be able to cope in whatever way we need. Some people cope best by finding these little moments of joy, right? To kind of lift our spirits, and they'll be legitimately super, super tiny, fleeting. I've said in the past, the sound of making grilled cheese was a moment of joy for me. And I had all the tools. I knew what to do to come out of burnout. It was just really challenging to do it in the moment. Much harder for me to come out of burnout this time around than burnout during COVID or as an entrepreneur. So my challenge to you is, if you're a family caregiver and you're having a really hard time right now, what is the silver lining? What's a simple joy? Would love to hear from you. Feel free to drop it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or any social media platform. Yeah. Until next time, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this fun little episode, Silver Lining, Simple Joys. And remember, as always, if you're a caregiver, it's absolutely okay to have somebody else do the dishes. I love you.